Hello and welcome to another standard video. Today we're checking out this red-black or Rakdos discard deck that has been putting up some pretty good results after the Pro Tour, and this is my take on it for best of one. When I say discard, I don't mean we're going to make the opponent discard cards, but rather we have a lot of cards we actively want to be discarding ourselves to enable our various synergies. This deck is quite aggressive since we're kind of looking to trade resources from our hand into a lot of extra damage on the battlefield, and one of the big new additions that enables this strategy is Moonshadow from Lorwyn Eclipsed, a 1-mana 7/7 with Menace, although it does enter with 6 -1 counters on it, but we can remove those counters pretty quickly whenever one or more permanent cards are put into our graveyard from anywhere. So by discarding a permanent card, we now get to grow the Moonshadow, and as I've said, there's a lot of permanents we actively want in the graveyard. At 2 mana, there's Bloodghast, which we actively want to discard and then get back with Landfall as a 2/1, also has Haste if our opponent has 10 or less life, although of course cannot block. And then we also have the Flamewake Phoenix as a 2/2 with Flying and Haste, has to attack each combat if able, can technically block with it if you were to hardcast it in your second main phase, and then at the beginning of combat, if we have a creature with power 4 or greater, we can pay a red mana to return it from our graveyard to the battlefield and then immediately attack with it. So these are some of the cards that we actively want in our graveyard, so we're happy to discard them, growing Moonshadow in the process, as well as the Marauding Mako, which is another 1-drop that will grow as we discard one or more cards, getting an extra +1/+1 counter this time. Can also cycle it for 2 mana, so maybe in the late game if we top deck it, we can still discard it and maybe enable some of our other synergies that we already have in play. And then the Bloodthorn Flail is another huge addition for this deck as a 1-mana artifact equipment that can give a creature +2/+1. Not too impressive, but we can equip it by discarding a card rather than having to pay a bunch of mana, although we also have the option of equipping it for 3 mana instead. So now on turn 1 we could play one of our 1-mana creatures, and then on turn 2 we could already equip the Flail by discarding a card and essentially have a 4-powered creature ready to maybe get back a Flamewake Phoenix if that's what we discarded, and we can even equip the Flail multiple times onto the same creature just to discard additional cards, which is a play that can come up. And then at 2 mana, another awesome new discard outlet from Lorwyn is the Iron Shield Elf. We had very similar creatures to this in white before, now we have it in black as well, a 3/1 that can discard a card at any point to make it indestructible until end of turn, although we also have to tap it, which can sometimes be awkward if you want to attack with Elf, while still maybe discarding a Bloodghast or Flamewake Phoenix, which we try to get back in the same turn to attack with, so then sometimes we'll have to make a choice between the two. But still an excellent enabler, and of course also great at setting up our Monument to Endurance, which is our late game finisher, which can also help deal with control decks that might be able to handle our creatures more easily. Then now Monument plus a discard outlet can still make the opponent lose 3 life whenever we discard a card, or it can also function as a card draw engine or a way to make additional treasure tokens if we just want to quickly empty out our hand. So this is another very important way to close out games where maybe the board has stalled out against the various green decks. Then now at least with the Monument we still have some additional reach. And then rounding out the deck, I'm playing the full playset of Inti. Some decklists only played 3 copies, but I've been happy with the full set of the legendary 2/2, saying whenever we attack we may discard a card, so that functions as another discard outlet, and when we do we also get an additional +1/+1 counter on an attacking creature, which also gains trample until end of turn, so this can be another important way to get a creature up to 4 power, so in turn we can also maybe get back a Flamewake Phoenix on a following attack. And whenever we discard 1 or more cards, doesn't matter how, we get to exile the top card of our library that we get to play until our next end step, so that can be another powerful source of card advantage. And then topping off our curve, we also have 2 copies of Tersa as a 3/3 with Haste that can discard up to 2 cards when it enters and then draw that many. Can also maybe get cards back out of the graveyard if it's full enough, although that doesn't come up very often. And then we have a few removal spells to round things out. Of course, we want to make sure we have as many permanent cards as possible to enable Moonshadow, since discarding a instant or sorcery is not going to grow it, but we still have a few copies of Requiting Hex as an efficient answer. And then at 2 mana, there's Bitter Triumph to take out creatures or planeswalkers, can even discard a card as an additional cost, so in a pinch it can also serve as an additional discard outlet. And then the mana base is only really possible thanks to having all these dual lands, with Blood Crypt being a new addition from Lorwyn Eclipsed. And then we also have Multiversal Passage and Starting Town as necessary evils, since we need our lands to be able to produce both colors. Sometimes we need to operate on a relatively low land count, since we'll want to discard a bunch of cards. So then usually we're happy with just having 2 or 3 lands on the battlefield. And then Blazemire Verge and 3 of each basic. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Alright, we're on the draw. We have a hand that could use some actual red mana, although even drawing a swamp would do it. Turn 1 Moonshadow, turn 2 maybe Bitter Triumph, discard Bloodghast, and then Inti can enable the Monument. So I don't hate it. Opponent with a Miner. And Mako will have to wait. At least we have a target for the Triumph already. And the color. So possible our opponent's playing the new 3-drop that can make copies of creatures that return out of the graveyard. They probably also have the Skeleton Enchantment next turn. So we're already on the back foot. Did find a Blood Crypt. Kind of want to play the Mako before we start discarding. Yeah, Inti attack is also not amazing here, when we can't get any value other than discarding a Bloodghast. I think I should still Blood Crypt here. And I'll discard a Bloodghast anyway. Exile the Bloodghast, that one goes to waste. And then next turn maybe Mako plus Triumph, but yeah, opponent's got the corpses on curve. Do I need to trade? Can we win a race? I'm taking 8. Yeah, there's no way we survive this. And another Monument might be a little slow here. Either way, get back Bloodghasts. Play Mako. And keep a Bitter Triumph. And then I don't think I'm attacking here. Gotta hit the brakes. Stash Skeleton makes another hasty Menace Skeleton. So, can block the Miner, take out Tiny Bones, discarding Monuments. They get to maybe pick up corpses again. And our opponent plays a color on defense. Find the elf. So how much damage are we talking? If we play the elf, maybe discarding Monument. Then Moonshadow is 6, 3 from Mako. So we're getting close. If I play Monument this turn, that doesn't seem quite as good. So I think we do play the elf. And then maybe just send Bloodghast Moonshadow. Have 2 blockers back. And can make the elf indestructible if needed. Cecil, okay. And our corpses. So how aggressive do we get? Just send in the 3/1 Menace, which I'm not really interested in blocking. So I can play Monument, discard it for 3 damage essentially, put our opponent to 4. They have 3 blockers, but this one has Menace. So I think we might have gotten there. So I can attack first. Discard Passage. And this should just be enough. But incredibly close game. Opponent had a great draw as well. They were on the play, so yeah, could not have been much closer. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. This hand is maybe lacking a good 2-drop, but we still have Moonshadow plus Flail to enable monuments. If they remove Moonshadow, we could be in a bit of trouble. So it's not perfect, but our late game with double monument could be quite powerful. And all we need is additional creatures to equip the Flail onto. Well, let's see what we're up against. Plains and Authority. Alright, so can still Flail, discard Phoenix, get it back, although the Phoenix will enter tapped. Although now we're pretty well set up with 2 creatures, so if they remove 1, we can still keep the Flail going. Another Authority. Opponent passes. And this seems like a good monument turn. Can discard the Mako just to trigger monuments. And then the question is what to choose with the monument. Can move the equipment onto the Phoenix just to diversify a little bit, maybe. Opponent on a white control deck. Could try and get the game over with quickly, or we can accumulate a few more resources first. Let's just draw a card. And hit for 7. And then I think I'm good for now. Even though I could discard another Phoenix. We'll save that to enable 2 monuments next turn. So it does appear to be a white tokens deck. And they have the new Ajani. But yeah, pretty sure we have lethal next turn. No matter which creature they take out. Can just play another monument. And discard. Equipping Phoenix. Make our opponent lose 6 life. And attack. Could have also discarded a second card to draw a few, but it wasn't even necessary. Awesome, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. We have Mako plus Flail. Can discard Bloodghast. Yeah, this seems fine. Need to start on Passage. I guess it's not quite perfect, since I wouldn't be able to discard Bloodghast and get it back on turn 2, since we don't have a Blood Crypt. But I imagine I still want to play the Mako first. Although now if they take it out, I wouldn't be able to hardcast the Bloodghast. Drew a second Mako, that works. So play this. Play Flail. Discard Bloodghast. I wonder if I should discard another Bloodghast right away. Just to get this to 4 toughness. Opponent a red-green. Could be kind of a Badger Mole ramp deck. So then I'm not too worried about a 3 damage burn spell. If I discard another Bloodghast, we get in 1 more damage. If I were to draw a monument, let's say, then I'm better off waiting. But I kind of like the aggressive line here. And Breakout, yep. Alright, it's a Delirium deck instead. That's fine. They might have to keep it on defense. Nope, opponent's still attacking. Oh, I will be getting back double Bloodghast. They do not have haste just yet, but we're getting close. And then I don't mind discarding another card here. Maximum damage. Alright, good luck. Opponent says good game. I don't think they're getting out of this. They would need a very spectacular sequence to deal 15. Tersa's not quite gonna do it. And then next turn I could maybe equip a Bloodghast. They did successfully enable Delirium with a Nameless Inversion. So yeah, if I just equip Bloodghast, I can even pay 3. Then we should have guaranteed lethal. Alright, GG's. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a pretty nice hand. Moonshadow into Elf, can discard the Phoenix and maybe get it back after growing Moonshadow up to 4 power. Got some interaction if needed. A negotiation. So exile a card from my hand, I think it's the Hex. Mako's tempting too. Still prefer Elf for now. And I don't think I'm discarding anything just yet. Since we can maybe grow the Mako as well next turn. Flail's not bad. So yeah, I can play the Mako. Play the Flail. And then discard a card to equip probably the Elf if they have removal, although if I want to get back the Phoenix, I'll still have to play the land out, so then they can destroy the Elf anyways. I guess mono black, they could have a hard time removing the Elf, but they might have an easier time on Moonshadow. So I'll try this. They don't seem to be holding priority, so I might be able to get away with this. Go to attackers, pay a red. Although now the Elf is susceptible to removal. Well, we got to untap, so now the Elf can become indestructible again. Go to attackers. And Charm Exiles. Alright. So do I want to respond? Can still discard Moonshadow to essentially hit for 8. What would be the main concern now? Opponent having the Black Sun Sweeper, which would not get rid of the Phoenix. So if I can get my opponent to 2, I guess that's good enough. And then it's 3 mana to equip, so we could still do that. And yeah, opponent scoops it up, I'll take it. On to the next one. Alright, we're on the play with a pretty nice hand. Got a turn 1 Mako. And then Passage versus Starting Town. Think I'll actually go Passage on red, since we also need red mana to get back the Phoenix next turn. So then with Flail we can get the Mako up to 4 power already, facing a red deck. So yeah, gotta hope they don't have any 1 mana burn spells, but I'm still gonna go for it. Flail, equip Mako, discard Phoenix, and then we can immediately get it back. Alright, that worked, so we're already attacking for 6. And I'll just pass. Could have considered equipping the Mako again with a flail just to discard another Phoenix, maybe get it up to 4 toughness to play around something like a Lightning Strike, which they did end up having. So I can once again equip the flail, discarding a Phoenix to get it back. Or we could get the Monument to Endurance going, equipping flail to enable it. I think I prefer Monument this turn. And then we'll still have a 4-powered creature, putting the opponent to 10. Maybe next turn we'll get the Phoenix back. Could also make a treasure and get the Phoenix back right now, which is maybe a little safer in the event that they remove the Phoenix. But I could also just draw a card here, since getting in for 4 this turn still has us potentially attacking for 10 next turn with the second Monument. Bloodghast was a nice pickup. So we'll get our opponent to 10. And then could have also used Flail a second time here to discard Bloodghast, just to have it in the graveyard, but we might end up hardcasting it now. So we'll see. Can our opponent remove Phoenix? They cannot. Magebay and Lizard is fine. Okay, so a couple ways we can sequence now. If I play the land first, I'm not getting Bloodghast back with Landfall. But if I want red mana to get back the Phoenix, I'm probably better off playing the Swamp first. For single red, I don't think there's anything that can really mess me up here. So yeah, I'll go Swamp, play Monument, keeping red mana available. And then, even though we only have 1 creature, I can still re-equip it with the same Flail to discard a card. So that's a pretty important interaction to know about. And then now we can make our opponent lose 6 and still get back another Phoenix. So we even had 2 damage to spare. Alright, sweet, on to the next one. Alright, we're on the play with a promising hand. Mako into Flail, discard Bloodghasts, or we can get Inti going. Either way, promising start. Play-ins into Seamrip, yeah, that's an effective answer here. At least we've got another good follow-up. The Elf is not going to help against Seamrip, so presumably our opponent's on mono-white auras. So how do we want to handle that? This is probably our worst matchup. Elf can discard Bloodghast, Inti can set up an attack for next turn, but Indestructible doesn't help against Exile. Start with Inti maybe. Alright, I get to attack. So I could start there, just attack, discard Bloodghast, see what we draw. Or I could go land Tersa and discard Bloodghast in the process. I don't mind an attack first, and then maybe follow up with an Elf. Alright, find a Moonshadow. So I can go Moonshadow, land, get back Bloodghast. And play the Elf. Now if our opponent goes land into Starcage, I'll be pretty sad. It is still the Aura deck. So they must have Sheltered by Ghosts in hand if they didn't play creatures sooner. Or they wanted to wait to keep up Shard Mage's Rescue, which would also make sense. Find another Bloodghast. Although this turn, Tersa, discard Bloodghast, Flail seems good. If we exile a land with Inti, we can get it back. We get to trigger Moonshadow a bunch. But next turn they could have Sheltered by Ghost with Shard Mage's Rescue as backup as well. So yeah, I can still go for a Flail here, because I wouldn't be able to get to Phoenix back if I discard it with Elf and then still also attack with Elf, which is probably better. So get back Bloodghasts. Play Flail. And then what makes sense to equip? Everything still, at the very least, trades for the Spider. So I just want to diversify my threats to maybe still be sheltered by ghosts. So then maybe I equip Bloodghasts instead of going all in on the menacing Moonshadow. Sadly, exile the third Bloodghast, which I wouldn't be able to get back. Still a decent attack. 1 point short of our opponent being forced to block. They take it all. Alright, so nothing else I can really do. They might fire off Shard Mage's Rescue just to get to 1 extra power. And then I imagine they're going for Moonshadow here with the Sheltered by Ghosts. And I have to somehow still present lethal. So we'll see. Ethereal Armor first. Okay. A second Ethereal Armor could be close to lethal as well. And there's a Sheltered by Ghosts. So that was very much expected. Gotta go for Moonshadow. And then they don't have to attack. I don't think they will. So then top decking a removal spell would be awesome. Because I don't think we can necessarily present lethal past a 10-powered first striking lifelinker. Although we're getting close actually. Alright, I guess our opponent did the math and decided that they were dead on board. Can have a closer look here as we rank up. But yeah, opponent attacking was not an option, so then staying back. Next turn I can attack with everyone. Biggest creature currently Bloodghast. I can pump another Bloodghast up to 3 power, let's say. And then we have 9 plus 3 is 12 going through. So yeah, that worked out. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. We have Moonshadow into Inti as our discard outlet. If we lose Inti, then we might struggle to get the ball rolling, as we would not have a discard outlet, but I'll try it. Turn 1 Forest into Llanowar Elves. So speed is of the essence. So I don't mind just discarding right away. And then next turn we can still Monument, discard again. Don't expect Inti to get removed. And then we'll also have a creature big enough to get back the Phoenix on the following turn. It is a Landfall variant. And a Banter Mole on 2. Land sequencing is actually irrelevant. I could play Starting Town, discard Passage, keep Verge for next turn, or I can just plan to discard all my lands. Starting with Starting Town. And then what to do with the Monument. Yeah, I can't quite get back Phoenix this turn, so it's between drawing or losing 3. I think we just want to get the game over with, honestly. And then counter... Maybe makes more sense on the Moonshadow, since it can already double block Inti, even as a 3-3. Would still trade for Banter Mole. Opponent takes it, falls to 7. So yeah, next turn, assuming nothing crazy happens, I can get back Phoenix, discard lands, and take it from there. Alright, Green Shell is pretty good. They also have Reach as well. Pollinator also triggers Green Shell. So yeah, our opponent put a lot of stuff in play out of nowhere. That's the power of Banter Mole Cub. Still gonna stick to the plan. And then ENT doesn't have to attack. Can just send Moonshadow, although they can double block it with Chocobo and Green Shell pretty easily. So I might still be better off attacking with ENT as well. So yeah, by discarding a land, we already grow Moonshadow up to a 6/6. Monument lose 3. If I grow Phoenix, they're more likely to block it with a green shell, so then they won't be able to block something else with it. A 6/6 Moonshadow opponent can still double block with Chocobo and Cub, which would be a decent trade, but then ENT gets to connect. Trample could also matter if they just want to chump with Pollinator and Cub, for instance. I don't hate counter on Phoenix. And then I'll still get to play the Mako. Alright, so we got them to block the Phoenix with a green shell. Alright, so Moonshadow lives, which means I can get Phoenix back once again. And then I should keep land in hand as something to discard. But yeah, I'm out of a actual discard outlet now to enable monuments, and our opponent gets to go off with the Explorer. So it's still a very close game. Yeah, that Chocobo is now large enough to trade for Moonshadow. This is the card they really want to combine with the green shell. More landfall triggers. Do they feel comfortable enough attacking? They do not. Well, I drew a blank, so all I can do is get back a Phoenix, which is forced to attack. So that's not incredibly helpful. How does an all-out attack look like? Opponent can still double block Moonshadow, but at least it would trade for something. So maybe all-out attack is still fine. They're probably happy losing Explorer, so they'll double block Chocobo, Explorer, Moonshadow. Green Shell blocks Phoenix, Mako gets in for 1, but now any discard outlet can be lethal with Monument. And then I have to hope not to die next turn. Which, yes, very much possible. So the blocks we expected. Alright, I don't think I need to play a land out. Just pass. We're at 20, so they can potentially get 10 lands in play to pump the team with a green shell. And then, yeah, I could be dead. Yeah, Ascension might do it, if they have a land left. And yeah, they even have lethal without doing anything else right now. But yeah, the land should seal it. They could also activate Ba Sing Se. So yeah, very close game here. Just a discard outlet away from lethal. GG's. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with what looks like a keepable hand. Looking to pick up some more payoffs for discarding. that we can maybe get back out of the graveyard. The rest will take our Triumph. Turn 1, probably Blood Crypt now. Even though it gives him a little bit of extra info. Start with Moonshadow. So it looks like mono black. More controlling if they're running Maze Mind Tome. Well, I can double spell. Although getting the Elf in play is nice, since they may not have clean answers to it. Although if I go Mako Moonshadow this turn, then next turn I can get in for a ton of damage. Although it could be weak to the Black Sun Sweeper if they cast it for X equals 1. So, not an easy choice. But I think given my hand, I can't play around the Sweeper here. Just have to go for it. It's going to be the core, which is Changeling, so it also enables their various demon synergies. Now Elf can immediately discard 1 card, just to grow with the rest of the team. Although now we're also in cover-up territory, where our opponents could still wipe my board. So the question is, do I attack for 6, or do I try attacking for 9, put my opponent to 10? If they don't have a sweeper, I feel like I can still get there next turn regardless. So it's, if they do have a sweeper, what's the better play? Does keeping an extra land in hand matter? Maybe if we draw Monument. And then of course I'll also want to save the Elf, so then I'll have to discard something to begin with. Which may or may not be the Bitter Triumph. So yeah, big turn coming up. Alright, they're activating Tome. That's promising. Hex one of the Moonshadows is fine. Still grows the other. And they had removal for that one too. Alright, that happens. Found a monument, so we got rewarded for waiting. And then I'm gonna want to attack first. And then use Elf, discard Triumph just to draw a card, I think. So I still have fuel to keep discarding with Elf. So yeah, just 6 damage. If I were to discard again, it's essentially +4, which is still not quite enough. But we're getting close. And the combo of Elf plus Monument is pretty difficult for mono black to get rid of. They will gain 4 life here as well. And Annex will now start gaining 2. So is there a sequence that guarantees a lethal? Either way, we're happy to discard and draw. Just for the extra +1 counter. Find a flail. So opponent's gonna go back up to 13. If I discard, make them lose 3, discard again, lose 3. That's 6 plus 6, 12, plus 3, 15. So yeah, that should just be lethal. Make sure we attack first, so we don't tap the Elf. Alright. Well, we got lucky that they didn't have a timely sweeper, otherwise we might have fallen too far behind. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. Triple Flail, a nice discard outlet for Monument, but without a creature it's not quite gonna work. This one's better. If our creatures survive, we can deal quite a bit of damage. Start with Moonshadow. Opponent on a blue deck with Passage. So not entirely sure yet what it's going to be. So now we did pick up an elf as well. Do we still prefer Inti? Kind of like Inti a little bit more. If I don't draw a land, it can maybe help hit a land drop next turn. But for now I just want extra damage. Sadly this land will go to waste. It is still a Banter Mold deck. Makes sense. So yeah, start by attacking, discarding an elf. May as well grow Inti, although I would not expect my opponent to trade even for a 2-2. And did find a land now, so we get to play Monuments, which will give us a bit of reach once the board stalls out, because our opponent could already put some big creatures into play. It's going to be a Llanowar Elves. And opponent keeps up some interaction, perhaps. Well, seems like a pretty straightforward move to attackers. Discard elf. Make you lose 3. And ENT probably pumps itself now. Opponent had a Tidebinder. Not a card you typically see in these Banter Mold decks. So ended up countering the Moonshadow, so no longer has Menace. Although Tidebinder probably has to chump anyways. So opponent keeps the cub alive, falls to 2. Definitely play Moonshadow, and then... yeah, I guess we'll play the elf, and then as soon as I draw a card, we have lethal with the Monuments. So I don't think they're getting out of this one. Even with an Ouroboros. And our opponent scoops it up, awesome! So yeah, with a good enough start, we can sometimes overpower the Banter Mold decks as well, even when they have a functional draw. So overall, I was quite impressed by this Rakdos discard deck. Now that we have Moonshadow, the deck has that critical mass it needs at 1 mana to get the ball rolling, with multiple creatures that can grow as we discard. Monument gives the deck a bit of reach against more controlling strategies that might be able to handle the creatures. And then we have 8 nice creatures to get back from the graveyard between Bloodghast and Flamewake Phoenix, and just enough ways to get a creature to 4 power that we can reliably get the Phoenix back, which would otherwise be a concern as well. But with all the 1-drops growing, as well as the Flail being another key piece to get a Phoenix back on turn 2, overall makes this deck quite competitive. And yeah, it's been putting up some great results as of late, even after the Pro Tour, so the deck is good enough to hang with the big boys. So yeah, that's going to do it for today's gameplay. Want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.